I have plenty of money to care for a pretty young wife. This story isn't nearly as creepy as the ones that are regularly posted, but it did creep me out very much. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I work at a Quiznos in front of my university, right next to the dorms. I should also mention that I'm a redhead, which in the past has put me in somewhat similar situations, though in much smaller degrees. Maybe someday I'll post some of the creepier ones. Anyhow, because I work in front of a university, most of our clients are students and professors. Because of this, one man in particular always stood out to me. He wasn't a student or a professor, he was an older gentleman, maybe early 60s. He had a strange routine. Every day at 4 p.m., he would come into a restaurant with a giant duffel bag, leave it in a corner, and ask for a black coffee. I should mention that I usually work the cash register, so I always prepared his coffee. He would always stare at me very intently as he asked for his coffee, but never said anything. I wouldn't think anything of it if he wouldn't always sit in the exact same spot every day, directly in front of me, staring at me for over half an hour. After this, he would always ask for a cup of water and sit in the same spot again, and stare at me for a while longer. Usually I would try to distract myself doing a lot of different tasks, but I would always see him staring and it bothered me. After a while, he would always leave without taking his duffel bag and come back after an hour to once again sit and stare until he would finally leave. I should also add that, though he was always a pretty common customer, the routine itself only started a week after I started working there. This went on for 7 months. It was always the same exact routine. It became a joke among my coworkers that he probably just had a thing for redheads, and in all honesty, after the first months of the creepiness, I assumed it would never escalate and just got used to it. I dismissed him as a strange man and never gave it a second thought. Until recently, about 2 weeks ago, he decided it was time to strike up a conversation. He starts to ask me many questions, mostly about where I'm from. People assume I'm foreign because my red hair isn't all too common in my country, plus I have an accent caused by a speech impediment, and starts to ask me about exactly where I live, my age, my major, my family, etc. Thankfully, a line was forming, so he had to go drink his coffee. I thought it was strange that he finally decided to say something after so long, but never really got worried. When he returned for his usual cup of water, he told me how flawless my skin was, like porcelain. He then asked me to please take off my glasses, which I did. He then told me that he had never seen such pretty hazel eyes. By then, I felt like an item he was inspecting before purchase. He told me about how he used to be an engineer, so had a lot of money saved up to care for a pretty young wife if he ever found one. All of this he said with a strange smile on his face. By this time, I was trying to politely leave the cash register and go to the back, as I was starting to actually become worried. Sure, to anyone else, he could have seemed like your everyday flirty old man, except he had been watching me for months. I managed to get away and decided to go do dishes so I wouldn't have to go to the front of the store again. I told my boss and coworkers, and they all laughed it off, thinking I was being paranoid, but I felt like something was off. The next day, for the first time, he was not there. I found it weird, but decided to count my blessings. Other than the old man's absence, the day was completely normal. That night, I got off work around 8:30 p.m. and sat down on a bench on one of the better lit areas while I waited for my boyfriend to pick me up. A few seconds after I sat down, the old man sat down next to me. I immediately felt uncomfortable, especially since he was invading my personal space somewhat. He said that a pretty girl like me shouldn't sit alone in a bench at night, in a very low voice. That one line chilled me to the bone. Thankfully, by then, my boyfriend called and told me that he was in front. I mumbled something and left. After that, I refused to work the cash register and waited inside the restaurant until I got picked up. I could see that he got mad that I wasn't the one giving him his coffee, and at some point, stopped going altogether. Kentucky Fried Creeper. I posted this on Reddit Creepy Encounters earlier, but it seems applicable to here too. I'm hoping it's okay. This occurred back in June while I was in Europe teaching English. During a weekend break from teaching, I traveled to Prague to meet a friend who also happened to be studying in Europe. I arrived in Prague a day after my friend had, and therefore had already missed out on a night of debauchery. As a result, after the obligatory sightseeing was over, I was eager to go to clubs and get drunk like a proper 20-something tourist. My friend was not alone in Prague, however. She had been accompanied by her classmates, and before going out, we had to contact them to agree on a time and place to meet. For some strange reason, however, neither of their cell phones were working, and mine was dead as well. So in order to contact them, we found the closest fast food place that had free Wi-Fi. Behold, a KFC. We sat down and she proceeded to contact her classmates. Once done, we realized we had some time to kill, so we chatted while taking advantage of the free Wi-Fi. At one moment, my friend and her classmate began whispering back and forth to one another while staring at me. I figured they were poking fun at me, so I continuously asked them what they were looking at and talking about. Each time I uttered the remark, they would give me a look that suggested I should be quiet. Finally, I became too tired of it and leaned towards them to ask what was going on. At this point, they informed me that there was a man sitting directly behind me who was secretly taking pictures of the two girls on his phone. Confused and incredulous, I whipped my head around and sure enough came face to face with a cell phone camera and a creeper behind it. I suppose he realized the photo shoot was over, as he immediately pulled the phone down to his lap and kept his eyes there. I turned back around, unsure of how to deal with the situation. Do I take a phone? Do I take the phone? Can I do such a thing without any actual proof that he was taking photos? Eventually, the three of us decided to leave. However, on our way out, one of my companions glanced over at the man and, sure enough, he was flipping through his recently taken photos. As I type this, I still cannot fathom why he was taking photos of 3 people in a Czech KFC. Though, I may be happier not knowing. Dairy Queen. I live in a particularly weird part of Texas, in an area made mostly of subdivisions and rundown stores and libraries. One of the places I remember most from my childhood is the Dairy Queen 10 minutes away from my house. I used to make my parents take me there like every other week in the summer when I was around 8. But something happened that made us slow the frequency of our visits. My mom and I were finishing whatever ungodly sugary concoctions we'd gotten and were getting ready to get out and go back home. We made it to my mom's truck before she realized she had left her purse on the bathroom counter. She went to go retrieve it, telling me to stay in the car while she was gone, and locked me in. I had been sitting there for not even a minute when this random guy just appears out of nowhere and staggers around for a second before noticing me. He came over and tapped on the window I was sitting next to and asked me if I could lend him some money. Being 8 years old, I didn't have any money, and this guy was kind of scaring me, so I just sat there and shook my head. My mom came out of the store and started towards the truck before the guy saw her too. He asked her if she was my mom, and she said yes, walking back towards the driver's side door while keeping at least 3 yards distance between her and this guy. He looked like he was going to follow her, but once she got into the truck, he decided to just go back to the window. He asked again if my mom could give him some money. My mom was getting the same weird vibes from him as I was and told him, "Sorry, no." For some reason, this really pissed him off, and he banged on the window, telling her that he really needed money, and when she again declined, he started yelling that he hoped nobody would help her when she was in need and that she was a selfish whore, etc. My mom basically just floored it out of there, and both of us were silent on the way back. I hope I never come across anyone like him ever again.